Next is Dr. Steve Simpson. Now, Steve is a fellow of the Royal Society of Medicine and an elite performance director whose clients include some of the top names in sports, business, entertainment, and professional poker. I've always been a massive fan of Steve since we did the training together. I just thought he had an amazing life and journey already. And to see what he's actually managed to do and how he's evolved over these years and the people that he's working with, I mean, who shares some of his stories, I think it's fascinating. He's a best-selling author, actor, and presenter. He decided to be an actor recently, and now he's an actor as well. He regularly appears on TV and radio, and he's a feature writer for the Best You magazine, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, absolutely. He features all our sports guys that we've been featuring in the magazine for the last 2 years. He does a fantastic job. He does that also in leading newspapers and periodicals. Big round of applause, please, for Dr. Steve Simpson.
Good morning, champions. Morning. Do you feel like champions? That's the first question. Yeah, well, that's good, because over the next 25 minutes, I'm going to share the 7 secrets of success that all champions use to ignite their peak performance. Now, the good news is that at least one of these you'll be able to use immediately. The others will take a little more time, but maybe less time than you think. Now, I didn't invent these 7 secrets. The Illuminati have known about these secrets for hundreds, even thousands of years. My job was to try and identify the core concepts and see if I could use them myself. And if I could, then to share them with a wider audience, with people just like you. Now, the most important of these secrets is luck. And all champions will tell you that, and a few people smiling. So, you know, I think if we could choose what we wanted in life, I think luck would be pretty much high up there. Now, luck has fascinated generations, just like it fascinates some of you, and it fascinates me. Indeed, it fascinates me so much that I have just, a big sigh of relief, just finished writing a book about luck, and it's called Get Lucky Now. How about that? I did something right. Get lucky now. So here's the first big question. What if luck was not random? What if there are things that we can do to make ourselves luckier? How good would that feel? I hadn't even finished my sentence, and I saw some people nodding, and that's what that word luck does. So anyway, all journeys have a start, and my journey, when I started seriously thinking about luck, it was on a cold January morning. I woke up to the news, the not unexpected news, that the England cricket team had just lost the 5th and final test match in Australia. And I thought a lot of people are going to be very upset about this, and a lot of people are going to be even angry because, you know, we take our sport seriously. And by the way, those of you who aren't interested in any sport at all, don't worry, because the stuff I'm talking about with sport works in anything. I didn't think too much more about it until the phone went at 10 o'clock on this Sunday morning. It was a producer from Sky Sports. Could I get into their studio live for the lunchtime news at 12:25 to be interviewed? And I wasn't in London at the time, so I quickly thought about it, and I said, no, I can't promise I can be there, so I'd better say no. And the producer said, well, look, stand by your phone for 10 minutes and I'll call you back. And she did, and she said, we're sending an outside broadcast truck to your house. And my first thought was, oh my God, what are the neighbors going to think? Because we live in a pretty narrow street. We've moved from there, coincidentally. And my second thought was, well, what am I going to say? And I thought, well, I'm probably only going to have 2 or 3 minutes, so I'd better be like Bill Clinton and keep it simple. So I thought, I'm going to talk about confidence, because any of you who looked at that England cricket team, you could see they were going to lose. The way they were slumping around the place like this, they looked like they wanted to hide, and they didn't want to be there. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to talk about that. And there he is. There's Lorna Dunkley. There's a quick countdown to her, and they say, okay, you're live now. And she came straight in, no preamble, no warning what she was going to talk about. She said, Dr. Simpson, if you were in charge of the England cricket team, what would you do? Tell them to pull their shoulders back. Well, that was going to be my opening line. Would you believe it? But of course, that is exactly what I'd have said. If you're not enjoying your work, at least look as if you are. If you're not enjoying being on that cricket pitch, being bowled at 100 miles by this bloke Johnson, then at least look, because there's 1 million people who'd be in your shoes if they could. So pull your shoulders back is a good thing to do, because if you look confident, you'll start to feel it. It's physiology. You can trick the physiology. So there's one of the secrets. Number 2, anybody successful has got confidence, and it often doesn't come naturally. You have to work at it. Now, in fact, my journey started earlier than that in 2007 with a guinea pig. And now this guinea pig, sadly, it was a struggling golfer. She's also known as Caroline, and she also goes by the title of my wife. And she's actually sitting over there in the table. And I had so many, one thing I learned at a very expensive business training I went on, if you give a kid a hammer, everything's a nail. Well, once I started learning about NLP and this stuff, the world was just full of people who needed hitting on the head. And so I started with Caroline first, just in case things went badly wrong. And I won't talk about magic now, because I'm going to save that for later. If I talk about magic now, you'll be running for the doors. And I want you to stay just a few minutes longer now. So her problem was goals. She played golf and was getting frustrated because she was hitting so many bad shots and her scores every day were bad. So it didn't matter whether the sun was shining, whether she was with beautiful friends and all the rest of it. If that score looked bad, it wrecked her day. So I said, you've got the wrong goal, forget about that. When you play golf, just go out and have as much fun as you can with the people you're with, and control what you can control. And in golf, there's not much you can control, quite frankly. That ball bounces everywhere. But you can control what we call our pre-shot routine. So putting it another way, focus on process, and the results will take care of themselves. Well, the result there, 3 holes in 1 in 6 months. Have we got a mathematician here who can work out the chances of that? I've asked people, there are tour players that I work with who haven't got a single hole in 1. And that was in 6 months. Now that was definitely magic for me because it got me noticed. I got an invitation to go out to the States to work with Justin Rose's coach, and many conversations with the coach of Bubba Watson. Now, I didn't speak to either of those 2 golfers myself, but they've both gone on to win majors. And I like to believe that at least one little thing that I said filtered to them. I don't know whether they do or not, but confidence is all about living in a self-deluded fantasy. Chris Moorman, have we got any poker players here? I know there's one at the back. He's putting his hand up. Well, anyway, if you're a poker player, you would know Chris Moorman. Last time I checked, he's won over $17 million in online poker, and not including live events. And he's the #1 in the world. And there's a lovely story about how he got in touch with me, but I'll miss that. What I will say is that we spoke on the phone, and we wanted to meet, and our diaries were just diametrically opposed. And I knew, but I also knew in here, call it luck, I knew in here I had to speak to this guy. So I ended up buying my own air ticket, flying to Vancouver, and we worked together for 3 days. And his problem was goals. I said, what's the problem, Chris? You're #1 in the world. He said, well, I'm getting tired of this monkey on my back. I said, what particular monkey? He says, people have introduced me and they say, this is the best poker player in the world who's never won a major. No pressure, and this happens in so many things, in sport and in everything. People set themselves goals that are just too far away. You've got to be a lot closer to a goal to make it work. It's all right to have a dream, but there's a difference between a dream and a goal. So the first thing I said to him, Chris, I said, you've got to drop that goal for a start, and you've got to stop thinking about money. He said, Steve, you don't play poker, obviously, because my world ranking, my sponsorship, everything depends on how much money I earn. I said, Chris, you're not in charge of that. When a poker player goes into a live tournament, they have a 15% chance of making any money at all, because the cards are random, or so we believe. So they get used to losing, and that means they're going to have a lot of bad days at the poker table, just like Caroline was having a lot of bad days on the golf course. So I said, Chris, what can you control in that room? And he said, well, I can keep my focus. I can work on focus. I said, good. What else? He said, well, every hand of cards that comes my way, I will give it my maximum attention. I said, will you be able to do that? He said, yeah, I'll do that. I said, because that's the only thing I want you to think about. And a day of poker will last 12 hours, and a tournament will last 5 or even 7 days. That's why I call this a sport, because these people, you know, they've got to be fit, mind, body, and soul. Reece Topley, cricket fans in the room? No, blimey. One, thank you. Well, okay, I saw Reece when he was 13, and he certainly had confidence then, because there was a knock on the door, and Reece Topley comes in. His mother had been in touch with me and made an appointment, and I thought, well, you know, maybe Reece would come with his mother, especially as they know that I'm a hypnotist, and strange things can happen in dark rooms. But no, he came on his own, and he didn't really know what he wanted, actually. I said, well, what's the thing you're working on? And he said, well, it's not good enough being a fast bowler. You've got to be able to move the ball, and I won't blind you with the science here, but basically, to play for England, you've got to be able to move the ball both ways through the air and both ways off the pitch. Even a coach can't teach you that. So the secret there was visualization. So I spoke to him, and I spoke to him with his eyes closed. That always helps when you're trying to visualize counterintuitively. Close your eyes and let the mind see the stuff. And we looked at him running up to the wicket in slow, 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 slow motion. And then, once he'd got that, his intuition was telling him where his fingers and his hands should be and all this kind of thing. Then, we did it fast. We ran it fast, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. And this is how things start to myelinate, as we say. They start to be ingrained. So it's how Lewis Hamilton wins the Formula One. He will concentrate on one corner at a time. Slow, 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 and then run it. And then he'll run every possible scenario. A car stopping in front of him, a man jumping onto the track. So that when something like this happens, if it does happen, he's got it all covered. Anyway, Reece, good old Reece. There's the picture of him, just played for England, got his first cap, and then soon after he got his second. So he's played in the One Days and in the 2020. Liv, another poker player. She was my first top poker player, one of the best players in the world, definitely one of the best female players in the world. Poker players never call me, by the way, when they're winning, because it's an easy game when they're winning. I don't need any help from anybody, thank you very much. Liv called me because she's had great results, but she had a period of bad form for about 18 months. And talking to her again, I didn't need to talk about rocket science. She'd actually had some unfortunate things happen in her personal life over the previous 18 months. And her mind was so much focused on that she didn't have room left in her beautiful mind for playing poker. And I've already told you what stamina that requires. So the secret number 4 is mindfulness. And you hear so much about mindfulness. It means different things to different people. But to me, again, I like to keep it simple. It's living in the now. Liv was living in the past. These things, these memories, these were the big pictures that she had. And some people live too much in the future. I mean, to some extent, Chris Moorman was living in the future because he never got his major. Well, that's just as bad as living in the past. Living in the moment definitely takes a lot of practice, but well worth you thinking about. And anyway, fortunately, straight after working with me, coincidence, how many times are we going to say that? She had a very good result, and I just checked her stats the other day while I was preparing this talk, and she's just won another $500,000 in Spain on the European Poker Tour, so she's doing well. Angelica, one of the top Swedish lady golfers that I work with. She's a wonderful player. The reason why I chose that picture is her playing out of what we call a bunker. Do we have any golfers here, by the way? Just a few. All right, so I'll keep it very non-technical. She was coping. She was having problems with her driver. That's the big club you take off the tee that will mash the ball for miles. And they say you drive for show, putt for dough. But I'm sorry, I can't believe in that. Putting is vitally important, but you've got to smash that ball a long way before you give yourself a good chance of holding a putt. So I had to use my imagination here, and as I was in a hotel, the tournament was going, and as usual with Angelica, last minute, we had to talk about this thing. So the golf bag's between us, and I start touching the clubs, and I said, which of these is your favorite club? And she said, well, I love them all. I said, what about the driver? She said, don't trust it at the moment. I said, well, that's because your driver's a bad boyfriend. A bad boyfriend, she said in her Swedish accent, you mean he's going to turn up drunk and late and all that kind of stuff? I said, yeah, because he's a boy. You know, what do you want? Do you want a nice boyfriend? I can find you plenty of nice boys. She said, no, I like the bad, but I like them not to be so bad like that. Anyway, so you've got to get close to your driver. She said, you mean I should sleep with it? And I said, that's exactly what I mean. I mean it. If somebody's got a putting problem, I want them to sleep with their putter. I just want them to feel comfortable with it. And I got a text from her, a few days later, and I replied back. I said, is the driver in your bed? And she says, no, but he's sleeping on the sofa outside. He's getting closer every day. That's true. Yeah, and another thing, you never switch off when you're talking to Angelica. She always saves the best for last. She said, you know what, since you've been talking, I remembered I used to be lousy at playing out of these sand traps. And now she's number one on the tour for that, getting out and sinking the putt after. And she said, I did it by every morning telling myself that I was the best bunker player when I was really struggling with bunkers. Then after a week, I'd tell other people I was good. And then a week later, people would come up to me and say, Angelica, we know you're so good in bunkers, maybe you can give us a tip. So there we are. That's another good trick. And she thought of that herself. She's creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, and her last drive was that I saw when I was with her was 330 yards straight down the middle of a par 5 on the green for 2 and an easy birdie. Now, I needed to convince her. I've told you about my Get Lucky Now book. And if you write a book, you've got to walk the talk. Because the first question that people are going to ask you, especially the cynics, is, well, if you know everything about luck, have you been lucky? And yes, I have. I don't know whether you probably can't read that, but I decided I was going to set myself a challenge of winning some money from the bookmakers. They're the most ruthless, shrewdest people in the world. And I succeeded. I got to the target. In fact, I got within 200 pounds of the target I set myself. I think I was then thinking about goals, and then I slid back down quite a bit. But the fact is that they closed my accounts or restricted my accounts because I was winning too much money. So I took that as a compliment, and it wasn't that I know anything about betting or even poker for that matter, but I was lucky. And the other lucky thing, which I don't have time to tell you about, is I took an acting job. They wanted me to work for nothing, and it's gone into an international documentary series where I play Charles Darwin. And the secret of that, frankly, is magic. So now I can talk about magic. Luck is secret number 7. Luck is secret number 6. Magic is secret number 7. There's a difference. Because the bit that I forgot to mention in my introduction when I was writing this book, I talked to people about luck. I wanted to get their opinions. And a very common response I got from them was, the harder I work, the luckier I get. You've heard people say that? Now, there's obviously some truth in that, but it's far from the whole truth. Because the truth is that there are many, many people who work really, really hard, and that's probably you and me and everybody else, and we don't get the success we deserve. Whereas lucky people, they don't need to work so hard. They have more fun, they get greater success because good things seem to happen to them. And that's because they put themselves in the right place. And because they network and they find out about opportunities and they work hard, they're persistent, they're resilient. And when they get a setback, they don't give up and say, well, that was never a good idea in the first place. They carry on going. So those are logical. There are logical ways to get lucky, but magic is the illogical. Magic is when Caroline had her 3 holes in one, when some of the things that I've told you about that my clients have achieved and I've achieved, luck doesn't explain that. So that's why I believe, rightly or wrongly, and there'll be plenty of people who tell me that I'm wrong, is that we don't live in a random universe. And it makes me feel a little bit better when I know that people like Einstein said the same thing. Because he said, The theory of relativity and quantum theory, they can't both be right. And he hoped that it would be explained in his lifetime, and it wasn't. So they now talk about string theory and stuff like that, and synchronicity, with Carl Jung saying we have a commonality of universe background and all that thing. All I know is that when people think that I might be crazy saying this, you listen to a Nobel Prize-winning quantum physicist and see who talks more sense. So I believe in magic anyway, and it doesn't do me it can only do me good. I don't believe it can do me any harm. It's time for you to be lucky, I hope, because if you want to know more about what I've just raced through in the last few minutes, all you have to do is send me an email, and I will send you a PDF copy of my latest book. It hasn't been released yet, so you're not allowed, please, to share it or anything. But I'd love you to read it if you're interested. I'd love you to write to me with your comments. And there's even time that I can even change little bits of the book if necessary, because it's in final edit. Anybody recognize this guy? You won't if you're not golfers. Yeah, you do. His name is Louis Oosthuizen, South African golfer. And what he's holding in his hand is... won the Open at St Andrews. A lovely story about that. I don't have time for that. But now, ladies and gentlemen, champions, we're going to do a little bit of guided meditation. So put everything on the floor, and I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to trust me. Trust me, I'm a doctor. I'm not going to come and steal anything. And I want you to think of a time in your life when you were really, really good at something, when you were really in flow. And I know that if I ask you to think of the times when you screwed stuff up, I know that will be easier. But no, I want you to think of a time when you did something really good and people said how good you were. Because I know you've all got at least one thing. Now, when you've got something in your head, you just give me a little nod so that I know you're still all with me. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, that feeling, that mental state that you had, that feeling inside yourself when you were doing something really good and you felt proud of yourself, in just one word, what word would you use to describe that state? And give me a nod when you got it. Well done. The questions get harder. If this one word that you've chosen had a color, what would the color be? And give me a nod. Thank you. Now, for once, I want you to think about the future, no more than a year ahead. But I want you to think of one thing that you really want to accomplish, that you just haven't got round to quite yet. One thing you want to accomplish within the next year. Now, this is the bit that I leave to you and to your unconscious minds. Perhaps as you sleep and dream tonight, who knows? How can you use that word that you chose and that color to achieve your dream for this year? How can you do that? I'll leave that for you to think of. Now, very soon I'm going to ask you to open your eyes, but before I do that, I don't want to see a lot of zombies in front of me, because you've got another 8 wonderful speakers. So I want you to be full of energy and enthusiasm for the rest of the day. Now, open those eyes. Well done, folks. I've got a couple of minutes. Perhaps somebody could give me their word. Sorry? Brain? Rainbow. I like that. Rainbow. I was going to put a rainbow on my book cover. And what was the color? Sorry? Purple. You like the purple color. That's a good chakra color, isn't it, if anybody's into that kind of stuff. So, any idea how you might use that? Would you like to tell me? No. Fair enough. Absolutely not. And sorry for the intrusive questioning, but I respect that. Okay. Anybody else? A lady with a hand up there? Sorry? Excitement, that's a very common word that people use. Nobody's ever used rainbow before. I've heard excitement. And the color? Pink and orange, yeah. Are you going to share with me what you're going to use it for? Energy? Yeah. Wonderful. Because people who have dreams, they achieve stuff. I think as Paul said, if you're not thinking in your head, if you don't think you can do it in your head, it ain't going to happen. That's guaranteed. Gentleman here had his hand up.
Yeah, my word was brilliant. And the
Bri-
colour was blue.
Blue?
And the way that I'm going to use that is that I put myself forward in the future in a year's time for what I want to achieve.
Yep.
And then when the stumbling blocks come up, I'll make a big picture of the brilliant blue coming up, thinking, stay on track. This is the picture.
Okay, you may not have been able to hear that, but he was going to use his word and his colour for when he gets to a stumbling block, an adversity. He's going to use that to smash that wall down, because that's what champions do. Champions don't go home and have a beer. They smash that wall down. Yes, sir, you got about 5 seconds.
Isabella.
Isabella is the word.
My daughter's name, and it's gold.
Good. And it's gold. And the goal.
It's to put money in an account for her private education. It's over a year.
Okay, that's a very worthwhile thing, and I wish you every luck. So how are you going to use that gold colour?
To sell more things now.
Sell more things. Yeah. Sell more things and get more gold. Okay, I've got a couple of minutes to talk about myself. I've done enough of that. All I will say is that my card is over on the table there. I'm around all day for other questions that you want to ask. I will just say, well, you've already told me you're not interested in poker, but if you know anybody's interested in poker, I am giving a speech on Wednesday evening, and Bernardo's team have all the details about that. I do have a couple of minutes for more questions now, so you can ask me absolutely anything. Yes, sir.
I know I've had one, but yeah, just a question is that I have an 8-year-old son. He plays football in Sweden.
Yep.
And like all fathers, I'd like him to, I think he's actually pretty good and he wants to become a professional. And we use some of these visualization techniques. So is there anything that I could use with him? Sometimes I do coaching with the other boys as well, that they can use when they're taking a free kick, for example, how they can imagine it going in or things like that.
Well, that's a good one. And when you finish talking to your son, I hope you all heard that. He's got an 8-year-old son who's good, yeah. Taking penalties is the classic in football. There's a guy, Tony from Sky Sports over there, and he and I have talked about penalties because the England team have real difficulty with that. And the problem is with the struggling golfer and with Chris Moorman and with everybody else. It's the wrong goal. I mean, literally, the person is thinking about what's going to go wrong if that ball doesn't go into that net. He should just be focusing on process. I mean, these people, they've practiced 1,000 times. You just have to imagine you're doing it with your mates, being in the moment, not thinking of the past, not of the future. So I'd spend a lot of time talking about goals with these kids. Let them focus on what they can do. One goal for coaching kids, one thing, they like to get ticks. So you could ask them to write down 10 processes that will help them. Number one might be, I'm going to turn up 10 minutes early to every practice. So, I've got plenty of time to get my kid on. I can go and run around a little bit, get warmed up before the others. The fact that they're there first will make them feel better. Stuff like that. Okay, I'm out of time. I look forward to speaking to you during the rest of the day. Have a wonderful day. And I would like to thank you very much for being such a wonderful, attentive audience.